Hello Horror Hounds, we are rounding off now our look at season 1 of Freddy's Nightmares with the final 2 episodes, 21 and 22, and I have just finished watching episode 21 called Identity Crisis, which is a little apt. This is a series that is prone to having its focus wander from time to time across the spread of 22 episodes. And the A story, the first story of this episode, is a prime example of that. The protagonist that we're following is a husband and father just about to turn 40, and the entire episode is a sort of midlife crisis, anxiety scenario, a sort of intergenerational factions. He doesn't understand his son. The values his son has are completely antithetical to the values he has. And whilst I'm watching it, whilst the story's good, whilst the way it's portrayed is fine. It would make a fine sort of Twilight Zone episode, in actual fact, and that's high praise. When did this series become about 40-something guys going through midlife crises? There's far too many of them dotted around here. Far too many episodes about corporate life and, life in the workplace and stuff like that, rather than it being about the teenage kids, the worries about growing up, becoming mature, having to get a job, relationships, things like that. Things that the Nightmare on Elm Street movies were always about the kids versus the adults. And it's the adults that disbelieve the stories of the kids, and the kids are on their own having to fight Freddy the Boogeyman. So whilst I actually like the story, whilst that A story is one of the stronger that there has been in the show, I don't know what place it has. I mean, he's from the flower power generation, and he's an architect, and he's having to sell out to the corporate man. Quite literally, these phrases are used. And his son is essentially a capitalist that doesn't seem to share his values, and the whole nightmare scenario descends into a sort of dystopian fascistic state where the young are, out with the old, in with the new, and anything old and outmoded and outdated is being completely done away with in a sort of Orwellian fashion. It's strong, but I'm not really sure what its place is with the Freddy's Nightmares TV series. The second story, and this is rare for the show, the second story is completely unconnected with the first story. At least we're back with the teens in the second story, and a girl who is she's become convinced that she was adopted. She feels alien from her mother. Her father's not on the scene anymore, having died. So she feels that there's something wrong. She feels a disconnect with her parents. She feels like a cuckoo in the nest kind of thing. She's convinced that her mother isn't her real mother, and she's trying to search for her real mother. But all of this stuff plays really strong with the Nightmare movies and the themes that the Nightmare on Elm Street movies do. It just happens to be a weaker story, unfortunately for me, until the end. The end's very nasty, in fact, and one of the things this show does do consistently is end on a nasty note rather than a happy note. The happy endings are sort of rarities, few and far between. There's a nice little bit of play in the middle of this section where she's gone to the adoption agency and she's found the address of her birth mother, and it's the house, the Elm Street house, at least as it's presented in this TV show. It looks slightly different in the TV show than it does in the movies, but it's the Elm Street house, and she goes there and finds out that Freddy is her father. None of this being canon, it all happens in the nightmare, in the dream scenario. But it got my attention. So all in all, that was quite a strange episode. The stronger portion felt completely disconnected from Elm Street and that world, and the one that had stronger ties to the Elm Street world, the second story, was the weaker of the two, but with a smashing ending. So we're completely on the home stretch now. The final episode of season 1. episode 22, called Safe Sex, which I believe made it onto the very limited DVD releases. I think they released DVDs with 3, maybe at a push 4 episodes on them, and there are only 2 or 3 of those DVDs, but I'm convinced that Safe Sex was one of those episodes. So let's finish off season 1 of Freddy's Nightmares, hopefully in style, with episode 22, Safe Sex. I will see you after the little fade to let you know what I thought. Well, it is not too difficult to see why that final episode was included in the official DVD releases. It's one of the few episodes scattered throughout the series that is about Freddy and features Freddy. The 2 parts of the story, the A story and the B story, are very heavily interconnected, so the episode almost plays like a single 45-minute episode, which I really do like. The first half is about a high school kid called Dana, who is in therapy, which is a very 80s sort of obsession. Again, kids in therapy. Now it's not so remarkable or notable, but back then it was definitely a thing. And Dana is speaking to his therapist about a girl at school that he is sort of obsessing over, Caitlin. You would call her, now you'd call her an alternative girl. Back then maybe a goth chick. She's got a little rock chick in her, but let's leave the labels to one side. She's an outsider, and it turns out that she in her turn is obsessed with Freddy Krueger. And as he tells his therapist, it's not so much that he thinks about her all the time, it's that he dreams about her all the time, and he dreams about rescuing her from Freddy. But as it turns out, in his dreams, she is not what she seems, and so when the episode turns on to him trying to woo her, and as is the obsession with all teenage boys, get together with her, his first time, as Freddy says, you always remember your first time as long as you survive it. And as it turns out, Caitlin is not who she seems to be. So poor old Dana's first time, even in the dreamscape, is his last. The second portion of the story, the B story, then moves on to Caitlin and her obsession with Freddy. She's seeing the same therapist, so there's a nice connection, a nice through line there. But when she starts dreaming about Freddy, she realizes that her idea of who Freddy was and the reality of who Freddy is are 2 very, very different things. At the same time, Dana's best friend has asked her out, and she sort of has to choose between going on a date with the normal human guy or having her Destiny's date with Freddy. Things of note in this episode, I have to note a reference to Cheesy Boy, the establishment that took over Beefy Boy. Beefy Boy being the takeaway burger bar that's introduced and features in quite a number of the episodes. As I joked in one of the earlier videos, Beefy Boy is the most consistent contribution this TV series has to the Springwood myth, the Beefy Boy franchise. It was taken over by Cheesy Boy. Cheesy Boy gets a mention here. Also in the second half of the story, on the radio, in a dream, but given as a high school football score, Freddy versus the children of Springwood, it actually gives Freddy's body count at that point as 640. I don't know where that number came from, but I'm sure someone somewhere has totted up all the body counts from the movies. Although actually, if you're counting the movies, his body count by the time Freddy's Dead rolls around with the little information at the start is enormous, isn't it? Let's not go there, maybe. So a strong finish for the series. I kind of hope that season 2 dots Freddy-centric episodes throughout it as well. I guess as we inevitably move on to season 2, We'll find out. But that's season 1 done and dusted. 22 episodes, 11 videos. Hope you enjoyed them, and I'll see you in your nightmares. That was an awful sign off.